Okay, thank you everybody. Thank you very much. Thank you, that was really good. Good 2 minutes there. We're going to ask our panelists just again to share for 3 minutes maximum their experience of what they've just heard. So no one's prepared anything. They weren't able to see what was being presented tonight, so it's completely new. Not that that was determined by us, but that's how it ended up. Councillor Tricia O'Brien, would you like just to give a response?
Hello everyone. Can you hear me all right? Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me here tonight, Jerry, and thank you for a very interesting presentation. I have actually been to Strasbourg and I thought it was a bit of a Venice, and that confirms it even more. Because you've got so many canals. Lots of parallels with Liverpool, I thought. A river through the centre, having to connect two separate areas as we see it, but our areas are the Wirral and the city side, and we all speak the same language. But we don't have a tram line to connect us. In fact, we never got our tram line, did we? Not that it was intended to cross the Mersey. But I do think that focuses for me, one really important area is we need the right infrastructure, and you seem to have sorted that out very well. Other things that struck me about it were things like people saying to me there are buildings that are being allowed in the city now that are too high, much higher than other buildings. But this also has that idea of having high buildings, but not everywhere, so you're not overwhelmed with them. And I know that our planning department are very keen on the idea of having gateway high buildings on entries and exits from specific areas. The other thing that struck me about this was that there are very distinct areas. Here they're very much defined, aren't they, by the water. But our distinct areas in the city can partly be defined by the canals and so on, but they're often defined by the industrial history. So we've got now a fabric district. We've got others that are about the heritage. So we've got the Georgian quarter of the city. And I noticed that you use all of that very well. And I hope that going forward, we're going to more and more use those ideas in our city so that we have distinct quarters. One of the things that I really loved about this was the idea that all your countryside came into your town. I've always loved the ideas of garden cities. I always thought to myself when I used to go and see my nana, who lived in the East End of London, how sad it was that it all looked so built up. There was a lovely park in the area, but there weren't trees along the streets and things like that, which you have got here, so that the park can then connect with other parks and we get green spaces and green wedges. So I won't mention the fact that on planning inquiry we've been overturned on protecting some of that, because it's rather annoying, isn't it, that we have these people in the planning inspectorate who can have so much power over what we want to achieve as a city. And I don't know how much you get of that kind of interference in your ideas, but this is another reason why, even though originally a Londoner, I really like the idea of being an adopted Scouser, and that we have a lot more power in the north to determine what we want for ourselves, and we need a lot more of it. And finally, just final word on materials. I love the way that you think about your materials, the colours of things, how important it is to get the colours to harmonise. Modern developments can seem very jarring, but not if you get some harmony with other aspects of the area. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tricia. Mark Kitts, our Assistant Director of Regeneration.
Okay, thank you, and thank you very much for the presentation. It was great. It was fantastic, actually, and you must be really proud of what you've achieved in Strasbourg. I must say I've never been, but I think I will do quite soon. And I'll take my lovely wife with me when I go. So there's some nice shops there that I can drop her off while I go and have a look at all the nice places that you've got. Just to kind of give you a little bit of an idea of what I'm doing and why I'm on this panel, I'm not only part of the Council's Regeneration Department responsible for now housing, as Jerry said, I'm Chief Exec of the housing company that Liverpool City Council has just created. I'm also the chairman of the Cities Partnership World Heritage Site Steering Group. So I've got a very relevant interest in this series of events and also this session tonight. And I think one of the things that I'm really keen on kind of looking into in a little bit more detail is the kind of why and how with some of the things that have happened in Strasbourg. I mean, you know, every city that I've come across, every town that I've come across has a vision for its future, and it comes up with great plans for what it wants to do to deliver on certain aims and aspirations, and Liverpool's no different to that. But the devil is always in the detail, and as Tricia quite rightly said, you know, we've got the complications sometimes of other third-party inputs into the way in which decisions are made on planning process, for example, or the way in which investment decisions are made. So as a city that has suffered somewhere in the region of £350 million worth of cuts over the last few years, and the need to grow the city's economy by somewhere in the region of 28,000 jobs over the next 10 years or so, you know, we've got an enormous amount of work to do. So in actually maintaining the city's World Heritage Site status, which is really, really important to us, we've got to balance that with the need to grow the city's economy. So when I look at a place like Strasbourg, which looks to me on face value to be a lot bigger than Liverpool geographically, but also smaller in terms of the level of population, that's a challenge in itself, because in growing Liverpool's economy, in creating employment space, in creating new space and place for people to live within the city, that obviously needs to take up land and property, and there needs to be new and different and fresh ideas in terms of the way in which that is done and brought forward. So I'm really keen to learn some of the lessons from the plans that have been put in place in Strasbourg, and to how we kind of get to grips with some of the why and how issues. I think the other thing that I would observe is there's a lot of similarities in terms of the plan making approach. You know, there were various plans that we saw in the presentation. The one around the Citadel stood out for me. It seemed to resemble quite nicely with some of the things that we've talked about around the King's Dock area in Liverpool, where we've got that interface between the waterfront, the history associated with that, and the redevelopment of an area for whatever particular given reason. And the one thing that Liverpool more recently is starting to do far better, in my professional opinion, is make plans to change places for the better. So when a lot of people talk about place making, and that is what we're all about now, and you know, over the last couple of years in particular, we've seen plans that have emerged for the likes of the 10 Streets, which I think you visited today as part of your tour. You know, 10 Streets is partly within the World Heritage Site and wholly within the buffer zone. And the 10 Streets spatial plan had to greatly respect issues associated with World Heritage Sites and make sure that any of the plans that come forward for particularly employment use paid respect to the area's historic fabric and the outstanding universal value of the World Heritage Site itself. And there are more of those to follow. We're about to, as a city, undertake a plan with our partners around the central business district, and that is another great example of not just being focused on a site or a small cluster of sites, but a whole collection of sites in a particular area in the city, which is particularly relevant to growing the city's economy. But what that area is part of is the World Heritage Site buffer zone. So there might not be that many historic buildings within the CBD, but there's definitely a relevance to an enabling factor to take, you know, good quality master plans forward. So as chairman of the World Heritage Site Steering Group, I would greatly like to make some further connection with Strasbourg, and you know, maybe even a trip over there at some point in time, but definitely to look at the plans in a little bit more detail. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Professor John Belcham.
Well, thank you very much again for that, those two presentations. I really think they lived up to the title of this seminar in the sense that it was inspirational. I take inspiration from it in various ways. I mean, first off, when we looked at the map and so on, it seemed to me that Strasbourg has got a far more compact, readily understood World Heritage Site than Liverpool. Liverpool is an extremely difficult World Heritage Site to walk around and so on, whereas when we looked at the map, there was something compact. And if I understood correctly, that the first inscription was of the medieval part, but then you suddenly got a second inscription to cover Neustadt. Well, now you see, that is really, I think, what Liverpool should do, because after all, I know we're on the waterfront now and the Three Graces and so on, but the inscription covered far, far more than the waterfront. It is, after all, a maritime mercantile city, and that merchant influence extends not just to those pioneer warehouses, which also were residential things and so on, but I mean, if you think of the way we should really have a World Heritage Site which includes the Georgian culture, includes the two cathedrals and so on. I think we really need to do something. And that will make visitors and also make local residents more aware of the fact that Liverpool is a World Heritage Site. But perhaps what I took away even more from tonight's presentation was that Strasbourg is the classic answer to those who think a World Heritage Site is trying to ossify, is trying to museumify places and so on. Because what we saw from this was that the World Heritage Site was actually inspiring new development. It was giving the ideas of a quality of design. It was giving an idea of a continuity with the past and taking you forward into the future. And I thought, wow, if we can do in the central and north docks what Strasbourg is doing in the Deux Rives, wouldn't it be absolutely fantastic? And it struck me that when we were looking at the little islands between the various canals, and we're talking about individual identity, why, when we're developing the North Docks, don't we try to recognize the individual identity of those particular dock areas? And so that it wouldn't be some anonymous, amorphous, massive new development, but would actually respect the historic urban landscape. It seems to me that you're doing it brilliantly in Strasbourg, and I think that really should be an example for us to follow when we develop the North and Central Docks, which desperately, of course, do need that. I mean, we're looking at a World Heritage Site, much of which is derelict and desolate, which is very, very different from talking about a wonderful preserved medieval city centre and a cleverly planned Prussian development in the 19th century thereafter. So let's hope that we are all going to learn from what we've heard tonight, because I think, to me, it offers very much the way forward and is an indication that heritage, I was going to say regeneration, but of course that's a dead word now. We have to talk about placemaking, as Marcus said. So that heritage and placemaking go together, and that the key to high quality redevelopment is to make sure that you value your World Heritage Site status.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you. So, please keep your questions to a small amount. Try not to make too many comments so we can give as many people as possible a chance to ask a question. So, we have a gender equality policy in Engage. So if a man asks a question, it will always be followed by a woman. Okay? So please be ready for that. I will not take two questions from two men together. So sorry about that, but that's what we do. It's our policy. So who'd like to ask the first question? Okay, gentleman over there. Can you just wait till the microphone comes to you, please?
Your river and canal crossings in Strasbourg, do any of them have tolls? And secondly, do you attach much importance to broadband, is it? Computer speed, I think that's the word. Do you pay much attention to that in your developmental program? Thank you.
Yeah. I think it seems a strange question to be asking a Frenchman about tolls.
Alors,
I think they find it's not their culture.
la réponse sur le péage est non. On traverse librement, et sauf dans les périodes, disons, tendues par rapport à la menace terroriste, il n'y a pas de contrôle des passages.
So we don't have to pay, and there is no control on the bridges or something like that, except in times where we have special events and there is like some security concerns.
En revanche, si on prend le tram, évidemment, il faut payer le tram.
Of course, if you want to cross with the tramway, then you have to take a
C'est
ticket.
modeste.
It's not very expensive.
Alors, la deuxième question.
Digital connectivity.
La-
Alors, en ce qui concerne la connexion digitale, on a des
Concerning
règles qui existent à l'intérieur de l'Union européenne, avec une difficulté, c'est que les réseaux que nous avons, en principe, lorsqu'on passe de l'autre côté, il y a une période, il y a un petit moment où on passe d'un réseau à l'autre et parfois on perd la connexion à ce moment-là. Je ne sais pas si c'est ça la question.
the question was about smart city, right? Connectivity.
Broadband speed, how fast is the connection?
Do you consider that in your developmental program?
Ah, ok, fiber or whatever. Ok, non, c'était plutôt sur la fibre, sur la 4G, etc. dans Strasbourg. Inside Strasbourg or between Strasbourg and Germany? Sorry? Inside the city or between Strasbourg and Germany?
Your talk seems to have been about the development of Strasbourg,
Yes.
and I wonder if you give any attention to broadband speeds and connectivity in your developmental program. Sorry, I thought the question was
We have.
Oui, Strasbourg est connecté.
Yes, we have.
Je pense comme... J'espère.
I'm going to suggest we have to move on because Strasbourg is the seat of the European Parliament, so I think we can imagine that there is some pretty good connectivity there. But if I think at the end, if you want to come and ask that question again, we don't want to stop you getting the information you want, but I think we need to move on to another. We need to have a woman asking the next question. On the back row, please.
I was really interested in the idea of certain zones and streets having a very strong sense of their own identity, visual identity. But is that something, when it comes to existing communities living in those areas, are you collaborating with them in the sense that is it a place-making process in which they're co-designing, in a sense, and feeding into the identity of those locations, so it's not just a visual thing?
Alors, je ne l'ai pas dit tout à l'heure, mais tout ce que nous faisons à Strasbourg, nous essayons de le faire sur la base de l'expertise, par exemple de Henri Bava, au hasard, sur la base de l'avis des citoyens, vous tous, et moi aussi d'ailleurs, et puis sur la base des élus qui décident. On est en régime démocratique représentatif et je ne peux pas inviter tous les Strasbourgeois sur la place Kléber, la place centrale, pour faire un référendum à chaque fois.
So, it's a very good question. I didn't say that before, but of course, everything we design in Strasbourg or we decide, we do it with 3 pillars. The first pillar are the experts. The second are all of the citizens, me included. And the third is the decision makers, elected people in the city. So it's very important for me to have these 3 pillars.
Et il ne faut pas que certains prennent le rôle de l'autre. ne faut pas que les experts deviennent des décideurs.
And,
Et-
and people have to keep their roles. So, for example, the expert should not decide,
Et il ne faut pas non plus que les
and
élus
the elected people
soient à la remorque des experts.
should not also be expert or try to want to have an expertise which is not theirs.
Ce qui fait que moi, je ne discute pas en direct, enfin, si, avec Henri, mais parce que je ne suis pas un expert.
So I'm not in a circle of experts, and I'm not discussing with them directly. Or yes, with Henri, of course, we have a good chat, but I'm not taking myself as an expert and having chats with experts on their expertise.
Comme j'ai une longue carrière politique derrière moi,
I have a long political career.
j'ai trouvé la
behind me,
méthode qui
and
consiste,
I found a method
lorsqu'un expert s'exprime,
when an expert is
à mettre en
having-
face un autre expert d'un avis différent et d'arbitrer avec mon bon sens.
I take an expert, another one, they discuss, they fight, and then I do the decision.
Okay, I think
C'est mon rôle.
okay.
Et je n'oublie pas les citoyens, bien entendu.
Can I just
Yeah.
add? Sorry, because in Strasbourg they have like the neighborhood committees. And for heritage, for example, even for listing, every neighborhood committee can suggest cultural activities as well as what they want to be on the heritage inventory. Of course, the final decision is up to the municipal council to decide what to take, but there is a huge consultation. Like as he said, the public space next to the cathedral, it took a year and a half of discussion about which tree to cut, not to cut, what tree to plant, etc. I mean, it's been a whole process.
Okay, the next question. Anybody else wants to ask the next question? Anybody at all? Anybody? Okay, the back row. Yeah, sorry, just wait for the...
Thanks. When you walked around the city earlier today on your visit, did you have any observations around where you think positive growth and development might come from, just from what you saw?
Alors, je sais qu'une des questions qui est posée aujourd'hui à Liverpool, mais depuis déjà un certain nombre d'années, c'est le classement de partie de Liverpool au patrimoine mondial de l'UNESCO.
I know that the
Fragilisé un petit peu.
I know that I know about the issue you're going on with the World Heritage Site in Liverpool, and I know that it's not always easy.
J'ai découvert ou redécouvert Liverpool, qui est une ville patrimoniale exceptionnelle,
And
à
I-
valeur patrimoniale universelle.
And I think that the universal value of Liverpool as a city and with its heritage is really, really interesting and important here.
Et donc, on a un peu le même problème à Strasbourg. Comment concilier la préservation de l'héritage, du patrimoine, et le développement de la ville?
And in fact, we have the same problem in Strasbourg. So how do you conserve, make the conservation of the heritage, and how do you develop the city as you want to develop it for the future?
Je pense que les orientations de l'UNESCO sont claires. Il s'agit d'une part de préserver l'intégrité, c'est-à-dire la totalité du site considéré, et d'autre part son authenticité.
So I think that the guidelines of UNESCO are very clear. We have to keep, and it's natural, the integrity and the authenticity of our heritage.
Mais l'UNESCO n'est plus sur la logique ancienne où on ne touche à rien.
But
On
the-
préserve et du coup on empêche le développement. Je crois qu'ils ont évolué là-dessus.
But they evolved, UNESCO evolved a lot, and they're not on the old ways that if you have to have an heritage, you have to keep it, to preserve it, to musify it a little bit, and that's it.
Je
No,
crois
they evolved.
Je pense que
It's changed, yeah.
Min Jae-young, professeur Min Jae-young pourrait en parler plus savamment que moi. Il faut que les villes puissent évoluer. tout en préservant le patrimoine, mais sans en faire des musées. Je ne sais plus, l'un d'entre vous l'a dit tout à l'heure, sans les momifier en quelque sorte.
We don't want to have cities that are mummified. So it's very important to keep this balance and to just think about this dynamic, how to make this dynamic happen in our cities.
Les momies sont éventuellement pour les musées, mais les villes doivent vivre.
Cities have to
Et vivre vraiment.
live really
Voilà.
deeply.
Ce serait un vaste sujet, mais
It's a big subject.
je pense que l'UNESCO a beaucoup évolué là-dessus.
Yeah, I'm just going to ask Henri to say something. I don't think we've quite answered your question there. The question was really about, are there any specific places you've seen today that you could suggest for development? Yeah. We have visited a lot of places today to do with the World Heritage Site, but maybe I don't think there's been, I mean, we have been on the Peel site, for example, seen all of that, and Stanley Dock, and along here on the waterfront. We've also travelled all the way around the World Heritage Site and looked at different parts, but I don't think they might be able to comment specifically. But I'm going to ask Henri to comment as well. Anything else?
Yeah, what is very important is to preserve through development. So develop and preserve at the same time. It's possible if you can install a kind of dialogue. Yeah, so from between the new buildings, the new open spaces, and the existing ones. If you can install a coherent system. So if you are installing like a architectural zoo with different architectures without a new coherence, it will mask, or it will integrate in the big mess. So the old buildings will be invisible. So how could we make them visible? So it has to be readable. So the new step has to be clearly identified, but respectful and in dialogue with the heritage. In that sense, I think with this way of developing or projecting, we can reach this difficulty, so this challenge, so preserving by developing. And the place is for sure here, it's along the water, so it's incredible. The embankments, the river, which is like a sea for us, so it's with the waves, you feel the wind. It's not at all like this in Paris. I'm living in Paris, not in Strasbourg, but it's not the same in Strasbourg too. We don't have tide, and that's incredible. So that's this. So facing this landscape, this is the place, and this place is very long. You have to find or to create a continuity. So how could we install this new continuity along the embankments, and how could we cross sometimes? Yes, cross it. Is it with ferries or with the bridge? So this is the main question here. It's not easy to answer, but I think this is the main question.
Thank you very much. One final question from a woman. We've got three women. The lady over there. Sorry. Apologies.
Merci. It won't be a question, but just a comment. Should I start in French and then in English? Ma remarque, c'est juste que j'apprécie énormément le fait que vous considérez l'héritage, le patrimoine, oui, c'est le mélange, le patrimoine naturel du paysage, autant que le patrimoine de la pierre et de l'architecture, et développer la ville dans ce sens. Pour moi, c'est de l'innovation plus qu'autre chose, et j'apprécie ça en tant que jeune architecte. Yes, I can. So it's just I just make a comment. It's not a question. It's just I appreciate very much the fact that they consider heritage as a landscape, as a nature, and then the regeneration and the development of the city is not about heritage in stone, in architecture and building, but also incorporate nature, incorporate natural biodiversity landscape within the city and developing the city with this natural heritage.
That's a very good comment. Thank you very much.
Juste un mot pour répondre. J'ai été très impressionné, moi, aujourd'hui, par la réutilisation en changeant de fonction des bâtiments portuaires.
Just a word following your comment. I was very impressed today in Liverpool when I saw how you reuse the buildings in the port.
On a fait la même chose à Strasbourg, on avait des haras.
We did the same thing in Strasbourg. We had
haras
stallion
pour les chevaux,
no, stables.
Stables.
Yeah, stables, yeah.
presque au centre-ville.
Almost in the city center with horses.
Plutôt que de les démolir, on en a fait autre chose. On en a fait un hôtel, un restaurant et un lieu où se trouvent des start-up médicales.
And we didn't destroy them, but we found a way to a creative way to reuse them with a labo, like an hotel, a restaurant, but also a conference space for medical research and
Je
startups.
pense que c'est important d'abord d'essayer de garder les bâtiments existants et puis peut-être de les faire changer de fonction, évidemment de les aménager. Et c'est ce qui s'est fait par exemple à l'hôtel Titanic où nous sommes. On a fait un hôtel qui est superbe.
The fundamentals, the heritage, the buildings, but to change their function, to be creative, and this is exactly what we saw in the Titanic Hotel, for example. So it's nice there also for this reason.
Okay, I'm going to take Chairman's privilege and bring things to a close. Apologies for being slightly over time. I want to say thank you to our sponsors tonight, without whose support this would not have been possible. RS Clare, and particularly Ian Meadows, who's the chair, and David Meadows, head of customer services and marketing. RS Clare was founded in 1748 and is the longest established company manufacturing lubricants in the UK, here in Liverpool from 1748. So thank you to RS Clare very much. Brock Carmichael Architects, and especially the partner John Cassell, who's here, thank you. Planet and Pete Swift and his team who are here tonight, and Liverpool City Council, Mark Kitts, who has already told us is chair of the World Heritage Site Steering Group. I'd like to thank the venue here, the Cunard, the staff, Alan and Tony particularly, and Leslie for helping to get it for us. The marketing, design and digital agency Nonconform, especially Rachel, for all her work. The catering was done by Bean Catering from Brunswick Business Park. Joe Campbell here, who's doing the video for us from Culture City TV. It's been live streamed tonight, so we're very grateful that has happened. I want to thank the Engage board, particularly Graham and Zarino, who've done a lot of help tonight and in the last couple of days. Finally, to thank our panelists, to thank Mark, John and Tricia for their contribution, which I found was really good, very, very focused. Thank you very much. And of course to our speakers, to Mayor Roland Rees, and to his two interpreters, Minja and Julien, and also to, obviously, to Henri Bava for his presentation tonight. Seminar 2 will take place in 2 weeks' time, and the theme is the city of Bordeaux. And one of the things that's come up tonight is about planning and how it's all been done. Question around, do you involve the people in the discussions? Bordeaux is the center of a thing called negotiated urban planning, and they have a fabulous story to tell about how they have regenerated the port area using this but very French way of bringing everyone together. So it's going to be a fascinating talk. The World Heritage Site Coordinator is also an architect, and Bordeaux appointed an architect deliberately to be the World Heritage Site Coordinator. So it's going to be a very interesting discussion when Anne Law comes in 2 weeks' time. So that's Bordeaux, and it'll be in the Port of Liverpool building. So I just want to finally say thank you to all of you for coming. I hope we'll see you again. Please register online. If you'd like to spread the word about Engage, I'm hoping that Graham's near the door. There are some extra copies somewhere outside, hopefully, of the flyer. Please take as many as you want and pass them around. And I want to finally just give a brief gift, a small gift to Mayor Roland Rees. Thank you very much for coming and being here. A gift for Henri. Thank you so much. And Julian has done a huge amount of work behind the scenes, making it all possible to organise the mayor, to get us here. And a little lesser thank you to Minja. We ran out of books, so you've had. So thank you very. Can we give a big round of applause for all our speakers and guests tonight? Thank you very much.